Working in the morgue is a scary job. I'm not gonna say where I worked, save for that it was in Virginia, in a sort of rural area. I was a mortuary assistant for a few years before I just knocked out. Anyway, we experienced a lot of creepy shit that hasn't really seen in public a light just because nobody wants to talk about it. For anyone who doesn't know, a mortuary assistant is just that, an assistant. I like to call it being the coroner's bitch. But then again, I'm sure not all county coroners are as dickish as my boss was. We wash and prepare bodies for examination, set out the medical examiner tools, and in some situations, we might help with the autopsy itself. Very mature of me. The first experience I had that terrified me was in no way strange or paranormal. It was just heartbreaking. At about noon or close to it, the body of an 8-year-old girl came in. Anyone who works with the dead, funeral home, or morgue always gets a lump in their throat when a kid comes in. She was cute as a button and looked like she was taking a peaceful nap. It was already gut-wrenching, but what happened and about 15 minutes later gave me mental scars I'll never get rid of. I was going about my duties when I heard blood-curdling screams and banging from the cold chamber. We had just put her in. This scared me shitless for obvious reasons, but I quickly opened it to find out a completely terrified but alive kid suffering from the beginning of hypothermia. Oh my gosh, she was alive. Find out later she was in a coma and got mispronounced. Oh my gosh, she was alive. Oh my god. That's not terrifying. That's a blessing. Luckily and sort of miraculously, she suffered no brain damage. Well, aside from a shit ton of PTSD that will turn Chris Kyle into a raving lunatic, I bet her parents were overjoyed to have their girl back. I hope the fucker responsible for that got malpractice, but sadly, I doubt it. I doubt it. Doubt it. I doubt. I don't know how to pronounce it. Although kinda rare mispronunciations do happen, but it usually gets resolved before the person gets to us. That being said, waking up in the morgue is a real thing and it probably messed the poor kid up for life. About a year later, something else happened that really bothered me. At close the end of the day, the body of a slightly obese John Doe came to us from the cops, who all seemed ashen-faced and didn't want to fill out any paperwork or talk about how they come upon this guy. He was dead from several gunshots wounds to the chest. So we think, meh, narco shit, who cares? A lot of us that work in what I like to call the body industry don't like to learn personal details about our customers. Would you want to hear a guy's life story before you cut his chest open and relieve him of all his organs? No. So anyways, we stick chunks in the fridge and call it a day. Next day, I show up for work a little late and everybody looks uncomfortable. I ask the coroner what happened and he says nothing happened in a very defensive way. I try to get some anecdotes from the front desk lady. She doesn't say anything. So I cornered our forensic science tech and he spilled the beans. Apparently, Mark had come to work and found the doors to our facility wide open. He then also found chunks missing from his cold chamber, and all the other cold chamber doors were found open, and the bodies were strewn all over the place. Wow. Wow, that's really creepy. The cops showed up and did their thing an hour later. An hour later, they were tight-lipped about it too. I've actually heard several similar stories from other people over the years, and I try to ignore them and say somebody just took the body. But body snatching is not common for a lot of reasons. And there wasn't much reason to steal the corpse. So I wonder, because of a little thing called necrophilia, we do lock everything up pretty tight before we leave. Morgues aren't Fort Knox, but the whole thing just still has me what-the-fying. Me too. About close to the time I switched jobs and started working at funeral home. Bro, we had a customer come in that we nicknamed James Bond. We try to avoid jokes, but sometimes they happen as a coping mechanism. And as long as they are respectful and in good taste, everybody has a chuckle. But this wasn't a joke. The cops were just baffled by him as we were. They say they found him 40 feet up in a tree, white male, early 20s, in very good physical conditions. Hands were severely burned and cause of death was labeled exposure. And in his situation, that means they found them outside and have no idea what the fuck happened. Wow. His clothes were formal, tailored, and had no tags or insignias on them. Although he was somehow decomposed, it looked like he had a crew cut. No sunglasses, though actually nothing at all in his pockets. The whole thing was really freaky. Yeah. I switched to my funeral home job for a better pay, but I will be lying if I say I wasn't glad to be out of the morgue. It's a creepy and sad place, even for the folks that work there. Ooh, god damn.